Write about something unsaid for you or your character, or wherever this prompt takes you.
I always wanted to tell you, Daddy, the story you told when Grandmother Alice visited us was nonsense. It was Christmas, the best one, really, when I saw her beautiful dimpled fawn face and bubble cheeks for the first time. I wrapped my small arms around her corset disciplined girth. But even at 10, I saw through that story, told after you, grandmother, and my mother sat down and you talked of old times, rearing back every now and then, the proud keeper of funny and ironic truths. Your mother would offer essential details you missed. You said, bragged, that you never would have learned to read had your primary school teacher not beaten you every day until the day you'd read just well enough, just by one properly pronounced word, maybe, delivered in your mercy seeking, trembling little voice. Yet you decided cruelty to be the author of your literacy. Still, I appreciated your value of books. You're reading a book about Gandhi, reading to me Twain's chapter about Becky lost in the cave. And I cherish the picture still in my head of the hardcore unabridged floor model Webster squatting in the living room, half my height and comparable in width. You pointed at it whenever I asked what a word meant. Look it up, you said. Another story you told, I must admit I couldn't that day decipher. You never would forget how your father, my grandfather, whom I never met because he was the first one of the four to die, how your own daddy practically fell out laughing when you, his little boy, fell off the porch and busted your head wide open, as you put it. Thankfully, I kept my balance on all elevated platforms. I wouldn't have wanted you at 35, still a young man, to keel over dead from mirth at the sight of my tumbling head on to sustain a calamitous, comedic childhood concussion. And as it was, you found it so jarringly funny when, at the end of a scary TV show, my mother sent me into the kitchen to get her a glass of water. As I reached nervously through the dark for the light chain, you hollered, "Boo," and made me cry. Of course, my Chicago born mother would have been mortified by the very thought of any injury or physical threat to me, because for her version of love was fear. But for you, affection meant function, paying bills, buying Barbie dolls, not to mention the endless clothing and accoutrements that comprise these dolls' profitable entourage, and putting food on the table. That afternoon, to one up your bragging oratory, Grandmother Alice said quietly of your whooping machine of a teacher, "They ran her out of town." Do you know what a low-down bitch someone would have to be run out of Plains, Georgia, for beating kids when everyone beat their kids anyway? Now I understand, though, this sadism, fondly reminisced of at Christmas as though a kind former sweetheart, derived its identity in the big house, the overseer's voice, the slave quarters. But the brutality of our history was never talked about, except once you said that Harriet Tubman was just some woman who hit people over the head and dragged the North unconscious. Too bad. Had it actually gone down that way, you should have been there. After all, you've been taught that busted heads were the height of hilarity, the soul of wit, and the best of improv. You might have enjoyed yourself. Sure, I absorbed the discussions of civil rights and the Kennedys before I entered first grade, but you and my mother never talked about all the accumulated effects of all the times your souls had been doused in acid, hatred been thrown in your faces to extinguish any ideas of your own humanity. You lived out those curses, doing doomed acts of deflection and displacement. You even had been inspired to come up with the most cartoonishly idiotic theory of effective pedagogy imaginable. You could never make sense of your life, could you, Daddy? The ex-Marine who every time you came to a brick wall tried to become one. You didn't want to be a victim, so you became an accomplice, automatically bashed with the sickliest, shortest-lived creatures in the first world, American males. The death certificate said heart failure, and that was the truth.